on the frozen plains of South Dakota in December 1890. Snow fell silently over the Lakota Sioux. By the end of that day, hundreds of their men, women, and children would lie still beneath it, victims of what history remembers as the Wounded Knee Massacre. Before we continue, if you value deep and untold stories of history, consider subscribing to this channel. It allows us to bring you more research, more truth, and more lessons from the past that deserve to be remembered. The tragedy at Wounded Knee was not an isolated event. It was the culmination of centuries of broken promises, forced removals, and cultural destruction. By the time soldiers opened fire that day, Native nations had already endured generations of loss. Wounded Knee was the closing chapter of the so-called Indian Wars, but it was also the beginning of a long struggle for memory, justice, and survival. In the late 1880s, Native communities across the plains turned to a new spiritual movement called the Ghost Dance. It began with a Paiute prophet named Voka, who envisioned a future where Native peoples would be free of hunger, disease, and oppression. In his prophecy, the buffalo would return, the white settlers would vanish, and ancestors would rise again. The ghost dance spread like wildfire, especially among the Lakota Sioux, who were facing starvation after being confined to reservations and stripped of their hunting grounds. To the Lakota, the dance was more than ritual, it was hope itself. They believed that by dancing, they could summon a new world where their culture and people would endure. But to us authorities, the ghost dance looked dangerous. Agents, settlers, and soldiers misinterpreted it as preparation for war. Newspapers spread panic, claiming the Lakota were plotting rebellion. The U.S. government responded with fear and force. In December 1890, tension reached a breaking point. U.S. Indian police were sent to arrest Sitting Bull, the Hunkpapa Lakota leader and symbol of resistance. At dawn on December 15th, the police entered his home at Standing Rock Reservation. A struggle broke out. Sitting Bull was shot in the head, killed on the spot. His death sent shockwaves through Lakota communities. Many feared that further violence was coming. Groups of Lakota began leaving their reservations, seeking refuge with others who still held on to the ghost dance. Among them was Chief Spotted Elk, also known as Bigfoot, who led his band of Miniconjou Lakota. They marched south in the freezing December cold, hoping to find safety at Pine Ridge. On December 28, 1890, the U.S. 7th Cavalry intercepted Spotted Elk's band. Spotted Elk, gravely ill with pneumonia, raised a white flag of surrender. His people, numbering about 350, mostly women and children, were escorted to camp at Wounded Knee Creek. The soldiers surrounded them with artillery, including 4 Hotchkiss guns positioned on a nearby hill. The Lakota were effectively prisoners, huddled in the snow under military watch. At dawn, soldiers began disarming the Lakota. They ordered men to turn over their rifles. Tension filled the air. The Lakota resisted, some refusing to give up weapons they used for hunting and protection. During the search, a scuffle broke out between a soldier and a Lakota man, Black Coyote, who was reportedly deaf and may not have understood the order to surrender his rifle. The gun discharged. That single shot unleashed chaos. Within moments, the 7th Cavalry opened fire. The Hotchkiss guns rained explosive shells into the Lakota camp. Soldiers fired indiscriminately, cutting down men, women, and children as they fled. Eyewitnesses described the horror. Babies were shot as mothers tried to shield them. Elders were gunned down as they prayed. Survivors later recalled seeing the snow-stained red bodies scattered across the frozen ground. By the end, at least 250 to 300 Lakota lay dead, though some estimates place the number higher. Among them was Spotted Elk, who had raised the white flag in surrender. Nearly half of the dead were women and children. The 7th Cavalry lost 25 men, many killed by their own crossfire. Yet the army reported the event as a battle victory. For the Lakota, it was genocide. For days, the bodies lay where they had fallen, frozen in grotesque shapes. When a burial party finally arrived, they dug a mass grave and threw the Lakota dead into it without ceremony. One observer described seeing the frozen bodies piled like firewood. Photographs of the mass grave later shocked the world. Adding insult to tragedy, the U.S. government awarded 20 medals of honor to soldiers who participated in the massacre. These medals remain a source of deep pain and controversy as Native advocates continue to demand they be rescinded. Historians often mark Wounded Knee as the end of the so-called Indian Wars, the centuries-long struggle between Native nations and the United States. But for Native peoples, it was not an ending. It was another chapter in a much longer story of survival. The massacre etched itself into the memory of the Lakota and other Native nations. Survivors carried the stories, passing them down to generations who never forgot. The trauma of Wounded Knee joined a legacy of broken treaties, forced removals, and cultural destruction, trauma that still shapes Native identity today. In 1973, Wounded Knee once again became a symbol of resistance. Members of the American Indian Movement AIM occupied the town of Wounded Knee on Pine Ridge Reservation, protesting U.S. government treatment of Native peoples. The standoff lasted 71 days, echoing the unresolved grief and anger that began in 1890. Today, Wounded Knee is remembered as one of America's greatest tragedies. It forces the question, how can a nation that speaks of liberty and justice reconcile with a history of massacring its first peoples? Native voices, scholars, and communities continue to tell the story, ensuring that it is not buried beneath the snow. The Wounded Knee Massacre was not an accident. It was the outcome of fear, prejudice, and policies designed to erase Native existence. Mothers, fathers, and children who once danced in hope of renewal instead fell under the guns of an army sworn to protect liberty. Yet the Lakota survived. Their culture, songs, and stories endure. And Wounded Knee remains not only a place of death, but a place of remembrance, resilience, and truth. Before we close, if you want to help us bring more hidden truths and untold history to light, please subscribe to this channel. Together, we can keep these stories alive so that the lessons of Wounded Knee and countless others are never forgotten.